Good morning, friends. Please rise for the universal prayer. O hidden light, vibrant in every atom. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May each who feels himself as one with thee know he is therefore one with every other. Dear friends, present here and connected online, welcome to the second day of the 149th International Convention of the Theosophical Society. First of all, warmest, healthiest wishes for this brand new year. A brand new year that we have the privilege to start here in this sacred place. May it bring peace and blessings all over the world. Today's program includes 2 short lectures, and so we will start as scheduled with the first speaker that I am honored to introduce, Mrs. Linda Oliveira, former National President of the Theosophical Society in Australia. Linda Oliveira is a second-generation theosophist who joined the Theosophical Society in Australia in 1971 after hearing some talks of the philosopher Jiddu Krishnamurti. Later, her degree at the Australian National University focused mainly on psychology and political science. She was the national president of the Theosophical Society in Australia, as well as editor of its national magazine for a total of 16 years, during 2 periods, the second of which was completed in January 2021. Linda was the international vice president of the Theosophical Society from October 2008 until late 2011, serving 2.5 years of this period at Adyar, the Society's international headquarters in India, before returning to live in Australia. She has lectured and given study classes for the TS in various countries. Linda holds a strong conviction that a genuine exploration and reflection upon theosophy, the perennial wisdom, provides to those who are awake and alert the possibility of profound human spiritual transformation. The title of her talk is The Alchemy of Theosophy, and I request her to come and I give her the floor. Linda, please.
Respected International President, Mrs. Lily Boyd, officers, brothers and sisters from near and far, good morning to you all from beautiful Adyar. With the theme of this international convention in mind, I decided to speak on the subject of the alchemy of theosophy this morning. and would like to begin by observing what I think is a fact. You might think it's a theory. It's something that we can think of as the gap. The gap being a split or division between an intellectual appreciation of Theosophy on the one hand and the practice of its precepts in our daily lives on the other. For most students of Theosophy, I would suggest that such a gap exists to a greater or lesser extent. Since the reintroduction of Theosophy to the world in the late 19th century, a substantial body of writings on it has been generated. The teachings are one thing, and they certainly hold great significance for many of us. But the important question that we should ask ourselves is whether they have had a qualitative effect upon the way in which we live our life, perhaps even a transformative effect. The spiritual unfoldment of a human being requires what we can regard as an alchemical process. So what is alchemy? It has been commonly understood as a medieval form of chemistry, the chief aim of which was to discover how to turn ordinary or base metals into gold. So the production of gold is therefore the traditional function of an alchemist. Today we find some broader definitions of alchemy. For example, a power or process that changes or transforms something in a mysterious or impressive way, and an inexplicable or mysterious transmuting. In time, alchemy came to be associated with the search for the universal solvent, so-called, and the panacea. We will come to that. A solvent is something which dissolves other substances, which are then broken down into their quintessence or into their pure essence. Madame Blavatsky described alchemy as the chemistry of nature, and she commented that the transmutation of baser or common metal into gold is simply the terrestrial, the earthly aspect of alchemy, for the alchemical process has deeper significance still. She taught that it has three essential aspects: cosmic, human, and terrestrial. So three kinds of alchemy. She wrote that the first principle of the alchemist is the existence of this certain universal solvent by which all composite bodies are resolved into the homogeneous substance from which they are evolved. This pure gold is also called summa materia, implying the ultimate sum of what is known about matter, or the essence of matter. We can begin here to see a certain correspondence between this and the transformation of the human being, in the sense that through a certain inner kind of knowledge, we can come to know matter in all fields of existence, including subtler fields, and that we can ultimately come to know that unchanging, pure essence from which we have emanated. What, therefore, is human alchemy? Because that's really what we are concerned with today. What does this chemistry of producing gold mean in a deeper sense for the human being? HPB said that the occultist alchemist, spurning or rejecting Earth's gold, directs his or her efforts towards the transmutation of what theosophical teachings refer to as the lower quaternary into the upper triad of a human being, or to put it more simply, not in technical terms, we could say that this subtle gold, or the experience of that unchanging substance from which we are all derived, is produced by the flowering of our innermost nature. And I think of that very much when I walk past Banyan Tree Circle and see the beautiful lotuses which are resplendent at the moment. For HPB, alchemy was as much a spiritual philosophy as a physical science. She equated the mysterious process of the transmutation of lead into gold with the transformation of personality into pure, homogeneous spirit. The transformation of the personality into pure, homogeneous spirit. She referred to the soul, or manas, was the way she meant it there, assimilating buddhi. The soul assimilating buddhi, the manas, the mind principle assimilating buddhi. I would suggest that this is indeed the very heart of human alchemy. The mind principle assimilating buddhi. Through this rather mysterious process of assimilation, there is an emergence into the one life. Now, there is a practical implication to all of this. This is not just theory. We can note that HPB essentially emphasized this assimilation of buddhi by us, by our mind, not the assimilation of us by spirit. Specifically, this assimilation of buddhi by our mind principle. Recall the teaching that alchemy has three aspects: cosmic, human, and terrestrial. Human alchemy is that complete transformation which produces a regenerate human being. That is human alchemy. The general condition of humanity in our age of Kali Yuga is one of over-pronounced egoism, along with an excessively extreme at times enjoyment of material things. We all enjoy them, but perhaps sometimes it's too much. And also, these things generally overshadow the spiritual and the experience of greater simplicity if we are not careful. Humanity in general has fallen sway to self-interest in many forms. And that's why Theosophy is a marvellous thing, because it helps us understand ourselves so much better and gives us a vast perspective on life. So what is required if human alchemy is to occur? Well, it really requires a dramatic change within the mind. Fundamentally, we require a significant level of self-awareness. In Plato's Apology, Socrates famously talked about the unexamined life being not worth living. So do we have the courage to really look at ourselves and look at our lives? Can we see ourselves as we are in a balanced way? What are our strong points? What do we have to give to the world? And on the other hand, what are our imperfections? For we have those as well. It is not possible to change the ingrained tendencies of lifetimes overnight. Therefore, we can usefully undertake certain preparatory spiritual practices which can help to reconfigure the mind, render it more receptive to higher influences. And this will not be limited to the work of just one lifetime. Now, there's an interesting point here. The effort which is involved in certain things, such as meditation, becomes less arduous. It becomes a natural way of living as the mind becomes more infused with the one life. Or we could say, as the mind principle allows itself to be permeated by buddhi, the matter of which the mind consists will change in quality. It will become more attentive, more refined, far more sensitive to the numerous expressions of life which come into its field of awareness. This generates kindness and compassion towards all of nature's kingdoms. When they become truly blended and harmonious, our lower quaternary and upper triad, to use those technical terms, will work together seamlessly. Then we will know our quintessence, know our true essence, know our true self. The gold of human alchemy is produced by the fullest realization and expression of who we really are. It's a beautiful thought. That gold is that fullest expression of who we really are. Now, I want to make a distinction between two things. The theme of this convention is practical theosophy and the art of self-transformation. Theosophy can easily become crystallized as an accumulation of mental constructs which explain the universe and the vast trajectory of human evolution. Perhaps we can think of this as armchair theosophy, something which does not evolve a qualitative dedication or effort to change. However, divine wisdom needs to be expressed in our lives and in our deeds in order to find its completion and fulfillment. Divine wisdom needs to become complete. It needs to become fulfilled. We need to activate our understandings of theosophy in meaningful ways, or else they become selfish pursuits, and they're not really of much use, although we may find them intensely interesting. Indeed, an immersion in the teachings can help us to realize that we do need to examine ourselves. We do need to examine ourselves and quite likely change the way we live in certain respects. Theosophical teachings themselves can be thought of as twofold. Firstly, there are those teachings which provide a scaffolding, they provide a larger framework with which to understand the vastness of life. They're likely to be of great interest. Perhaps particular aspects of theosophy appeal to each of us, and they can expand the mind, but they will not necessarily precipitate meaningful change within us. Secondly, there are those teachings which are potentially transformative, provided we are willing to assimilate them. Provided we are willing to assimilate them, not just mentally, but throughout our being. Such assimilation can help to elevate the quality of our actions in all fields of consciousness. This assimilation is a very beautiful process. From a spiritual point of view, it's necessary to cease drifting along. To cease drifting along, because drifting is very easy to do. Perhaps sometimes we even feel as though we are out at sea on a raft without direction. But spiritual practices can stop us from drifting. They can help us render our inner environment susceptible to real transformation. Some of these are well enough known. We have HPB's Golden Stairs, for example. We have the yamas and the niyamas and all sorts of precepts from religious traditions. Hence in some of our little theosophical classical texts. And then, of course, there is the regular practice of meditation. The simple act of sitting quietly in a natural spot or in a dedicated sacred space helps us connect more deeply with life. I want to talk a bit now about infusions of buddhi into a receptive mind. If we can allow times for stillness as we journey through life, then this light, which is part of our inner being, has an opportunity to make itself felt, to infuse itself a little more into the mind. We need to be still and quiet for this to happen. We may experience small transformations, temporary moments of alchemy, if you like, when the mind is quiet and available at certain times to this refreshing soul energy. At such times, our principles really do align, at least temporarily. There was an American theosophist called Emily Sellin, and I'm sure a few people knew Emily. She wrote that change or transformation, illumination, enlightenment occurs now. It is a moment when we are fully conscious and there's this transformation that occurs. It's like a flash of lightning. However, there's a very important proviso here, and that is that the personal nature, the personal ego, whatever you want to call it, needs to be subdued in order to harmonize our inner principles. For she wrote that all the elements of our being have to be united in order for this sudden dissolution of the ahamkara or ego. The fact is, we have work to do. A little bit also on Dharma and ethics in self-transformation. This beautiful term Dharma is quite sublime, really. It's quite full of richness. This does not seem to be moving it. There we are. It's derived from the root dri, to hold or to support or to bear or to sustain. And when the term Dharma is rendered into English, there are perhaps 16 different versions at least of that. We read about things such as religion or duty, virtue, equity, justice, good works. So Dharma has a strong moral dimension to it. A secondary meaning of the term Dharma is really significant and very interesting as well, because it also means an essential quality or peculiarity, nature or character. So living according to our svadharma, if you like, our individual dharma, therefore supports or holds us in our essential nature. It establishes us in the truth of who we are essentially. It helps us to live in, to dwell in and express our divine nature, to be a bearer of our innermost being, which is good, which is true, and which is beautiful. So Dharma is extraordinarily precious. Ethics, which are so well conveyed in theosophical teachings, embody the essence of Dharma, because through living an ethical life, we are helping to support or sustain who we are essentially. The ethical setting of our compass or of our true direction should be of central concern when we consider the challenges of lived experience. And we all have challenges. That's just life in the physical world. The fact is that our commitment to living the divine wisdom, or living with divine wisdom as our pole star, is tested repeatedly in the various practical situations of daily living. The quest for the subtle gold of human alchemy, the experience of that homogeneous substance from which we are all derived, the experience of unity, if you like, is the enterprise in which we are ultimately engaged. Some may understand this as the search for God or Brahman or Tao, for example. It's not surprising, therefore, that ethics really are a golden strand that run throughout the teachings. The question of motive is certainly important. Emily Sellon also wrote, "The contributions that we make, the efforts that we make toward any tiny degree of spiritual insight are not for our personal self-development, but for humanity as a whole. This is the Bodhisattva ideal. The same compassion that we might feel for ourselves," she wrote, "we have to feel for others." In a similar vein, the Bhagavad Gita stresses the importance of acting without desire for results. Light on the Path presents in most uncompromising language the problem of desire and how it can be most usefully directed. For one who is serious about living spiritually, desire is to be transmuted from the personal, from that which is within you, as the text says, and beyond you, for it says, "Within you is the light of the world." We are doing this. This alchemy is an offering to all of life. If we sense deeply life's unity, then the principle of ahimsa can become the cornerstone for the way in which we live, non-harming. For many theosophists, non-harming becomes a daily observation, a daily practice. It's expressed in numerous ways. It may be the diet that we adopt, or it may be non-harming in relationships with others. It might be a refusal to take substances which could dull and distort our natural level of awareness and lucidity. Basic self-care is important, for we need to be as fully conscious as possible if interior alchemy is to occur. We need to be awake. Then there is the mind. Can we set about training the mind to do no harm? Meditation and deeper studies will certainly help. But how do we function at other times? Thoughts can move so rapidly before we even know it. We find ourselves having gone through a chain of thoughts which take us away from who we are essentially. But if we pay attention The practical application of mental ethics is learning to watch any tendency to think critically about another, for example. Such thoughts may not even be expressed in our speech, but they may still be there in the mind. We know that thoughts are things. We know that they have their own life. They have their strength and their effects. For the aware individual, a negative mental current can be consciously redirected so that it uplifts and supports another instead. So much for this. If we practice mental ethics, then our speech will be elevated accordingly. Recall that HPB essentially equated this mysterious transformation of base metal into gold with the transformation of personality into pure, homogeneous spirit. She emphasized this assimilation of buddhi by the mind principle. As we learn to think more altruistically, we open that mental gateway to buddhi a little more. The term crucible is a melting pot for chemicals, but it can also be applied to any trial or conflict. It can be like in a crucible of suffering. It's normal to experience trials and difficulties at different stages of life. But it's particularly at these times that we have real opportunities for change in our consciousness. Adversity may bring out certain beneficial qualities, and these can help to give expression to our Dharma. For human alchemy, though, this thorough reconfiguration or transformation of oneself occurs through the crucible of experience. Trials are these opportunities for the mind to become purer and more luminous as it opens to the freshness and beneficence of what HPB called the spiritual soul. And in such a state, love is discovered as the only reality. As Dante described it in the Divine Comedy, Paradiso, love that moves the sun and the other stars. Isn't that beautiful? Love that moves the sun and the other stars. And finally, notwithstanding the enormous global challenges that we face today, we can take heart from the alchemical possibility that lies before each of us. For many, or for any thorough transformation, any transformation of one individual does affect the whole. The voice of the silence is a shining gem of transformative theosophical literature which points us through the furnace of life towards the bodhisattva path. It describes in poetic, soul-filled language that increasing inner refinement which ultimately sees the flowering of the three vestures or ways of being of a Buddha. And so let's finish with a very beautiful quotation from that book. Out of the furnace of man's life and its black smoke, winged flames arise, flames purified that soaring onward neath the karmic eye, weave in the end the fabric glorified of the three vestures of the path.
Thank you, Linda, for encouraging us to go through this process of self-transformation, to leave our theosophical armchair. Thank you so much. And now, a person that all of you have seen everywhere, always busy in this campus. He is Shikhar Agnihotri, Convention Officer, National Lecturer and International Speaker. National Lecturer of the Indian section of the Theosophical Society for the past 5 years, International Speaker of the TS for the past 3 years. He has a Bachelor of Science in Nautical Science at Mumbai University. He voluntarily retired after working for 10 years from shipping service, and he joined the Theosophical Society in 2008 with inspiration from his mother, who is a member since 1980. He is the founder, member, and former secretary of Pragya Lodge, Lucknow, founder, member, and secretary of Maitri Lodge group of TOS in Lucknow, national lecturer of the Indian section of the Theosophical Society for the past 3 years, and has conducted study camps, seminars, youth camps, public lectures on theosophical subjects and holistic earth all over India in schools and colleges. Co-founded the YouTube channel Pragya CS Studio in May 2020 with wife Catalina to make theosophical teachings accessible to as many as possible in different languages. And so I give him the floor.
Thank you, Sister Patrizia. Dear and respected chairperson of the session, my co-speaker, President Mr. Tim Boyd, Mrs. Lily Boyd, sisters and brothers, first and foremost, I am delighted to have the opportunity to wish you all a very happy, healthy, and harmonious New Year on the very first day of the New Year, which is not an ordinary day, because it is the first day of the last year of the first quarter of the 21st century. Putting it this way makes it sound very complicated, but very special too, isn't it? Maybe that's how our mind works, that it makes simple things complicated and then justify its own existence, going around trying to solve those complexities for the rest of our lives. And so, without diminishing the spirit of the new year that I have just wished, at the same time, I urge everyone to inquire into the idea of what is new or special in a new year, or in any such event that is labeled as special by the mind. But before we go into that, I would like to invoke the Guru principle which is teaching us all the time. Om Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So coming back to our inquiry of what is new in a new year, except that it is new chronologically, and along with the fact that the beginning of the new year in the different calendars that exist worldwide do not coincide. So everybody has their own new years, makes this inquiry of a special event even more relevant when the subject of transformation is involved. Is it possible that the mind has made a big deal about it? Because has anything else changed since yesterday or since the last year? The similar change happens, the chronological change happens similar when a month is new, or a week is new, or a day is new, or when the fundamental ingredient of all of this, the present moment, is new. But very rarely do we see that the present moment is counted or lived as special or celebrated like a new year. I'm not saying we should not, we should, but why not every moment also? So could it be that the sense of separateness of the mind in the persuasion of its existence in the survival, the mind has created some dualistic psychological images of special, ordinary, grand, mundane, past, future, practical, theoretical. And having created those images, the mind then pushes us into a lifelong struggle and stress of pursuing that special, grand, exclusive lifestyle to become happy at some point of time in the future. And due to this approach, probably the mind has come to appreciate and celebrate only the special events and the bigger cycles like New Year. And hence, it misses out on the most fundamental and significant aspect of life, the divine hidden in every moment of daily life. And to be able to appreciate and celebrate this hidden life, light and love, this divinity that is embedded in every moment, in every interaction of the seemingly mundane daily life, a perception is needed. A perception that cuts right through the veil of the images that we have just talked about, making the realization of truth possible. The truth where there is no duality, no I, no you, only love. And I am sure most of us here must have studied at one point or the other that there is this latent power or faculty in the humans, the faculty of perception, which is named as prajna, or direct perception, or wisdom, or intuition, or buddhi, or maybe some other words in some other languages as well. Maybe that is why H.P. Blavatsky says that it is the only faculty by means of which men, humans, and things are seen in their true colors. And it is our duty to keep alive in man his spiritual intuitions. And for this intuition to manifest, leading to a transformation in the daily life, the philosopher's stone is required. But why am I talking about intuition or wisdom when I should be talking about gold, as Sister Linda just mentioned in her talk? Because I think for a lot of people, the philosopher's stone has always been surrounded with mystery and magic, but not so much with mysticism. And the reason behind such correlation probably emerges from the fact or the popular characteristic of the philosopher's stone, to transform any base metal into gold or silver. And this popular belief is not at all new or limited to a particular geographical area. Rather, it existed since antiquity and for all the chemists universally. And in one way or another, the reference to it has been made in different religious traditions. In the equivalent of the philosopher's stone, for example, in Buddhism and Hinduism, is the Chintamani, meaning the wish-fulfilling jewel. It is also referred to as the Parasmani, the touch jewel, meaning that it touches anything, that thing turns into gold. And so deep and widespread this belief was in the philosopher's stone that not only the alchemists, but a lot of scientists of that time made an effort to create or search for that stone. And those efforts were known as the magnum opus, that is the great work, which we all know in reference to H.P. Blavatsky, the secret doctrine was her magnum opus. But we would be missing a more significant aspect of it if we limit ourselves to this popular belief only. We might ask ourselves that in this process of philosopher's stone turning something into gold, are we not giving more importance to gold than the stone itself? Because a philosopher is a person who studies and practices philosophy. It comes from the Greek word philosopher, which means the lover of the wisdom. So what does a lover of the wisdom has to do anything with gold, which is just another metal on the earth? And as far as I have read and studied, the masters of the wisdom, in their letters or other messages, have never even once conveyed to the readers to go after making gold. So why does a lover of wisdom should go to extreme length to search for or create a stone to get more gold? Unless this is an allegory and the metaphor of gold is used for something that is as self-illuminating, spectacular, and valuable as gold can be in daily life. And the philosopher's stone stands for something that can inspire such a transformation by being the catalyst. And the two reasons that this allegory might be true, that the alchemists worldwide cannot yet claim to have found or created such a stone as of now. And secondly, because such were the traditional modes of teaching. And the Master KH tells to A.P. Sinnett in Mahatma Letters that it was never the intention of the occultists really to conceal what they had been writing from the earnest, determined students, but rather lock up the information for safety's sake in a secure box, the key to which is again intuition. And the same allegory can be observed in Mahayana Buddhism, where Chintamani that we just talked about is held by the Bodhisattva. And the Buddhist tradition maintains that by reciting the mantra of this Chintamani, of this jewel, one attains the wisdom of the Buddhas. They realize the true nature of the Buddhas, and very important thing, that they are able to transform suffering into enlightenment. Similarly, in Hinduism, the jewel is connected with the gods Vishnu and Ganesha, and very often depicted as the fabulous jewel in the possession of the Naga, the serpent king, and all three of whom, Vishnu, Ganesha, and the Naga, are related to or personify wisdom or buddhi. The Bible doesn't mention about the philosopher's stone as such, but in the mystical sense, Jesus Christ was considered to be the philosopher's stone. And we all know the Christ consciousness is the Buddhic consciousness. In spite of all these metaphors, just to clarify that there exists in nature the ways of transmutation of the metals which is continuously going on in the core of the earth. But while preparing for this talk, a possible hypothesis came to the mind related to the esoteric meaning. One of the esoteric meanings may be about the philosopher's stone, which indicated that maybe something like philosopher's stone may exist, but not exactly in the form that it was described. And if we connect the dots, we come across something in the human body, in the brain to be specific, which not only comes close to the physical description of the philosopher's stone, but also when activated, becomes a channel for intuition to manifest. The modern biologists have a very little information about that, about the scope of this organ, and that organ is the pineal gland, the third eye, about which, while commenting in a shloka in the Secret Doctrine, HPB writes about the third eye of the seer. It is the inner spiritual eye of the seer, and the faculty which manifests through it is not clairvoyance as ordinarily understood, but rather the faculty of spiritual intuition, through which direct and certain knowledge is obtainable. But how does Theosophy is a philosopher's stone? So with this reference, if we carefully observe, most of the theosophical literature in general, when we put it in practice, is aimed to unfold our Buddhic nature. Be it Isis Unveiled, the Secret Doctrine, Light on the Path, Voice of the Silence, or the Bhagavad Gita, or the Upanishads, or the Puranas, or the Bible, or the Quran, or the Tripitakas, Tao Te Ching, the Agam Sutras. Because Theosophy is not limited to the books or the literature published by the Theosophical Publishing House. But what is important is the transformative power of such texts. It has a very special thing. If we see, the transformative power exists in two, as far as I understand, in two things. One is the profound wisdom that these words carry with them, and the second thing is the way of their presentation. Mostly if we see such text, it will be in the form of a fable or a metaphor or a paradox or allegories. Why? Because these kind of things provokes perplexity in the mind. They are not easy to understand. It creates confusion in the mind and forces the mind to come out of its comfort zone and contemplate on it, meditate on it. And when this contemplation and meditation happens, it initiates a process of purification of the mind, which prepares the mind to receive that ever available light of intuition, thus transforming, when manifested in daily life, our daily life, and thus making Theosophy, from whichever source we have it, the philosopher's stone. But not for everyone, because it is not enough that we purchase the whole bookshop and keep it in our house and we will be transformed. Only for those who knock, as the dedication at the feet of the Master says, because for Theosophy to be the philosopher's stone, it is utterly necessary to try putting it in practice sincerely. How? by doing one's duty or swadharma or the right action in any given situation, no matter how many times we fail. Because if we have made a sincere effort and we fail, it is not a failure until we stop trying again and remain contented with the theory alone. And it looks very simple to do one's duty and putting theosophy in practice, but the challenge comes in the implementation when the sense of duty is colored either by the various levels of conditioning that I may have, the national, societal, family, different ones, or it is overtaken by the desire of personal gain. So what to do in such case? HPB says, she recommends to ask us to ask a question. She says, one general test may however be given. Will the proposed action that I'm going to do tend to promote that true brotherhood which it is the aim of theosophy to bring about? No real theosophist will have such much difficulty in applying such test. Yes, no difficulty, but considering our life to be a hustle and bustle of everything, so many things happening, it does become that we even forget to apply this test, and for this we find another mantra in theosophical literature to remind the checklist another checklist. And I keep saying that although this is the time of WhatsApp and telegrams, but the SMS still holds very good, way above all of them. Not the short messaging service though. SMS, as we know, study, meditation, and selfless service. And we all must be familiar with these, because the more we sweat in peace, the less we bleed in war. So daily life is a war. All the situations coming in, challenging us all the time. So when we have some time, we can do this. And we all are familiar with this. We are not going in detail, but one of a very important aspect that I would like to highlight in that is that these are not isolated and standalone events, but rather they are simultaneous and mutually complementary to each other. And together, all of them prepare the soil of the mind to receive the light of buddhi. But for some reason, it seems, and I may be wrong in this observation, and I apologize for others who are already doing it, because it may not be the case everywhere, but for some reason, the study has taken the front seat in the regular lodge meetings. I'm not talking about special lectures or the conventions or special events in that sense, but regular lodge meetings. That study has taken the front seat, that too in the form of lectures instead of a group study, discussion, contemplation on that study matter. And meditation and service, I would not say are ignored, but they are kind of left to the members for them to take care of themselves. In a way, it is in harmony with the tenet of freedom of thought in the Theosophical Society, that once the study is done, it is up to each and every member how to follow up on that. And it also gives us a hint about the assumption of the maturity of the member of the TS, that the member of a TS is a really mature seeker of truth rather than someone who need spoon feeding. So maybe that may be one of the reasons, but still, there is a possibility that there may be some new members who may get this idea that study only or lectures or information gathering are enough, and the practice may unconsciously takes a back seat, creating a gap, as Sister Linda mentioned in her talk, between the theory and the practice. So to avoid such a probable misunderstanding, if it exists anywhere, and to make the lodge of the TS a philosopher's stone, an environment of putting theosophy in practice can be created by using a combination of all of these, with the agreement of the members, of course. And this approach that I am sharing has been already tried and tested when we tried it in our Pragya Lodge in Lucknow, and where apart from study, we started meditation and service also as part of the lodge proceedings. And meditation, not in the form of a technique or a method or this method, that technique, no. Meditation as an art of knowing oneself. Similarly, simply turning our attention towards ourselves. Awareness of our breath, our body, our emotions, thoughts. How do we know something? By putting our attention. So as simple as that. And also, the members after that they had a marked transformation in their daily approach and daily attitude in dealing with some of the situations. And the service aspect was implemented in a two-way approach, in the form of service by using the power of group thought. We all have read that when people gather, the power of thought, it's like exponentially it increases. So, using that power for the spiritual well-being of everyone, and once in a while using some ritual. In Indian setup, I would say it is the Bharat Samaj Puja, where everyone comes together, channelize the energy, and distributes it for the welfare of everyone. And the second part of service, that once a month people gather, instead of doing any study, they take up a social project which is appropriate to their local conditions. Somewhere maybe planting is required, somewhere something else is required. When we work as a team, not just a study, that develops the bond and we understand each other better and we come closer. And that develops also the maturity. And this way, the whole cycle of the Trinity is complete, because the study gives the food for thought. The meditation gives the clarity of thought. And the service gives the opportunity to implement that thought in our daily life, because now there is no gap between the theory and the practical, because buddhi is now directly acting through the brain. Because then seeing becomes being. And the buddhi then, in this case, turns the philosopher's stone. And with the touch of buddhi, every action, every moment of daily life becomes sacred, or I would say valuable like gold. Because then every moment becomes a window or opportunity to perceive that one life which is working in myriads of forms, permeating everything and everyone. Then it is not only the new year that becomes special, but every moment also transforms into something very, very precious, to be taken care of, to be celebrated and enjoyed. And we are running end of the time, so last few things. And this transformation we have talked a lot, whether it's gold or what's happening. But I wanted also to share that are these transformations look alike, really manifesting in our daily life. And they can manifest in the millions of ways in our actions. But behind all of them, there is an understanding that is getting clearer and clearer. So a couple of them that I chose to share with you all. The conditioning that I am the body and I have a spirit begins to be replaced by I am the spirit and I have a vehicle to operate in this world. And with this constant reminder, the habit of identification with the body begins to weaken. And the glimpses of universal self are perceived. Glimpses I am saying because it's not a continuous stage. Glimpses of universal self, not only in oneself, but in everything and everyone around, making the practical universal brotherhood a reality, even if it is for some moments. Then, with this ever deepening understanding and realization of the laws of nature, of the direct perception, when we see the things as they are, what happens? We get contentment and peace, because it becomes clearer and clearer to me that not only the whatever external circumstances, problems, challenges I am facing in my life are of my own creation, but also they are the best given to me by the laws of karma or the law of compassion for make me or anyone to grow and evolve. I cannot ask for any other situation to be in. Although if other convention officer can take place, that would be a good thing, but that's on a lighter vein. So when this contentment and peace is there, what happens then? The tendency to blame others is transformed into introspection. That I do not blame anyone else. I now introspect myself, what is happening. The attitude of complaint transforms into gratitude. Whatever has come, I accept it as with gratitude. And the problem, what we see is as a problem, since our sight is changed, that problem actually turns into an opportunity. So a lot of psychological burden is cleared when we see that. And then when all of this happens, then there is a saying that we all know, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It's no more needed to guide us, because then the person does the right action for its own sake, without expecting anything in return or without expecting any recognition from situations of other people, as Theosophy teaches. And with all these insights, the truth is uncovered, and the root cause of each and every suffering, which is ignorance, is gradually removed by the touch of the Philosopher's stone in the form of Theosophy, getting us closer to intuition, as Colonel Olcott says in the Buddhist Catechism, that why does ignorance cause suffering? And he says, because it makes us prize what is not worth prizing, grieve for that we should not grieve for, consider real what is not real but only illusory, and pass our lives in the pursuit of worthless objects, neglecting what is in reality the most valuable. The most valuable is gold, the metaphor. But what is most valuable, to know the whole secret of man's existence and destiny, so that we may estimate at no more than their actual value and this life and its relations, so that we may live in a way to ensure the greatest happiness and the least suffering for our fellow men and ourselves, as also Sister Linda said in the end of that it is not for my personal growth, so that I can give more happiness to others and create less and less suffering. So, to sum up, I would just say, in my understanding, the Philosopher's stone, in its esoteric aspect, can be looked at not as an object, but as a principle that removes ignorance by its touch. It can be Theosophy in the form of a book. It can be Theosophy in the form of a compassionate, selfless act that we witness. It can be Theosophy when we meet a person full of love, or when we come in touch with nature. Anything or everything, anyone that removes our ignorance in a little or more degree is a representative of that Philosopher's stone principle, and maybe at some point of time in this life or the next, each one of us here may become the philosopher's stone for someone else, just as the Theosophical movement has been for 150 years for the collective human consciousness. And I thank once again Sister Patrizia for the introduction, Sister Catalina for helping me in the PowerPoint, and all of you for listening patiently. Thank you.
Dear friends, in the words of Shikhar, we are once again encouraged to work for self-transformation, to look for the philosopher's stone. So, I wish to correct myself, wishing you a happy, new, sacred, precious present moment. So I thank you all here and online for your kind attention, and I wish a good work to the Indian section for its upcoming meeting. And this session is over.